She said, people need to stop having kids before they are financially stable. You should be able to afford a nanny or a babysitter. My husband and I didn't have children until I was in my late 30s and debt-free. Have kids later in life. Work to be financially stable in life. Stop rushing to have kids in 20s when you are struggling with no savings. People need to plan ahead. Stop bringing kids into the world when you are struggling and need help. Makes no sense. Much as our generation is marrying and having children later than the previous generations, are we still doing it too young? Welcome to the NOIRPOISED podcast, where wisdom is power is more than just a motto. It is the season finale of season 2.
Can't believe it.
I know. So we have officially been putting episodes out for more than a year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, a year and a half. Wild to think. But those that have been listening, we thank you so much. We appreciate you. Those who are new, welcome. There's a whole lot of episodes that you can catch up on.
Definitely catch up.
So let's get straight into the conversation and then we'll do the whole breakdown thing towards the end. Okay. So we had a previous episode, it's linked above, about not having a village and how that's a common theme within the current generation now that are parenting. Mm-hmm. And our approach was more so like, not necessarily not having a village, but more so it isn't the same way that it was back in the day, right? We hear stories about maybe grandmothers and great-grandmothers being really active in children's lives and having like a really close relationship, where unfortunately now it's difficult for that to occur because some grandmothers are still working. And some just want to be outside and to each his own. And listen, do you. But point is, that conversation is what led to this conversation that we're about to discuss. But before we start the conversation, I want to bring up the comment that we received from one of our listeners. So shout out to you, whoever you are. I should shout out your name, right? Tina Love 8197. Thank you for listening. She made a very valid point. But at the same time, everything's about perspective. So there's always two sides of the coin, right? It's never one-sided. Some things work for some people and some things don't work, you know? But she said, people need to stop having kids before they are financially stable. You should be able to afford a nanny or a babysitter. My husband and I didn't have children until I was in my late 30s and debt-free. Have kids later in life. Work to be financially stable in life. Stop rushing to have kids in 20s when you are struggling with no savings. People need to plan ahead. Stop bringing kids into the world when you are struggling and need help. Makes no sense. I feel you, sis.
Yeah.
I definitely understand that mindset because that was one of the things that like made us wait a couple years after marriage before deciding to have kids. Everybody was like, you're married, have kids. And we were just like, no. One of them was financial things. Like we wanted to make sure that we had a good savings because we understood that like, for
kids
the first,
are expensive.
They are expensive. And we had talked about it before even getting married and engaged that I was going to stay home for a year or two in order to set the foundation with our children. And that's what we did. So in order to do that, obviously we had to make sure that we had the proper income and savings to make sure that that was possible to do and comfortable to do as well, right? But that's not easy for everyone to do.
Yeah.
Right? And I get where she's coming from. And sorry if I'm misgendering. I don't know if Tina Love, I'm assuming is a woman. She said my husband and I.
Yeah.
But I understand where the listener is coming from. And I low-key agree. I agree that people should make sure that they are at a specific type of space financially in order to have children or bring children into the world. And I don't think it's just finances. I think that should be the case emotionally and mentally too. If you have certain traumas that you know will naturally be passed on to a child, you should be wise enough to try to start the healing process first before you bring in a child into the situation. So it goes across the board, in my opinion, right? But we also have to look at people who were in a situation where finances were great and things change, right? Because for us, things have definitely changed. But nonetheless, we're still able to live a comfortable life. We're just not able to do everything that we would want to do because we're in a space of like making certain sacrifices to get to where we want to be. Right. And I think that's okay because you should be constantly evolving. And realistically, if you're constantly pulling into your savings, then eventually it's going to keep decreasing. So over time, you know what I mean? Like those type of things may become an issue for certain families and certain relationships. So I wanted to point that out because while I agree with her statement, and I do think that we should be bringing children into the world when we're prepared for them, the reality is life happens. Life happens to a lot of people. No matter how prepared you think you are, you make your plans and God makes his own. You make your plans, life laughs at you. So for many people, that's unfortunately a reality that has been taken away from them because of inflation and the increase in the cost of living. There are people who have set themselves up and things maybe happen. I've heard of couples where they were good, like beyond good, had investments in place. And then because of like the economy, everything that they were investing in kind of like was wiped out. And sometimes it's even the burdens of other family members too. Point, I don't want to get carried away, but point is, this is great. And that should be the goal and the aim. But the reality is some people try that and things happen and it didn't work. And then we also have to look at some people try that and do that. And now they're at that age in their late 30s where now they're struggling to have children.
Yeah. I mean,
so it's like you got to look at everything. I like to look at different perspectives. I don't think it's fair to just say one specific thing because it worked for a few, but you got to look at all different sides of it.
Yeah. Shout out to Tina and her husband for doing that because that takes a lot of discipline. And I'm speaking for myself when I say a lot of people have the I'll figure it out mentality. So you get into certain positions, you make decisions, and you know in the back of your mind you're not fully prepared for it. But you kind of convince yourself that, I'll figure it out. I have kids now. I'll just figure it out as I go.
Right.
And sometimes it works out. You get lucky. And other times you make things a lot harder than it should be.
I don't think it should ever be that. But to each his own.
This survey is kind of old. I couldn't find a recent survey. 47% of men and 38% of women had premarital doubts. 19% of the doubtful women and 14% of the doubtful men within 4 years had a divorce within 4 years, compared to 8% and 9% who had a divorce and they never had any doubts. So if both partners had doubts, the divorce rate was 20% in 4 years.
Wow.
So I think it goes to highlight again that some people have fears or have those thoughts,
of course,
and they have the mindset of I'm just going to figure it out kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not about that figure out life. Never been, never will be. I get that there's moments where you do have to figure it out, but for me, I like to look at the entire scenario. And I think that that's one of the things that clash for us, where I'll ask you like, okay, so what does 10 years from now sound like? And you used to tell me like 10 years. Like,
I can't plan that far
ahead. And I'm just like, what do you mean? Like, yes, you can. You definitely can. So for us, I think it balances out because we kind of keep each other leveled. But for me, the figuring it out, especially when it comes to things like a marriage and children, is I don't think it's fair to go into it with that mindset.
Yeah.
When you're in it, there are moments, a lot of moments, where that's going to be the case. You have to figure it out because no matter how much you prepare, the reality is once you're in it, it's a whole different ballgame. Yeah. You could read 1,000 books. You could be around 1,000 children. Every child is different. And even with your own kids, parenting every child is different. So no matter how much preparation is done, there's going to be a lot of aspects of it that you have to figure out in the moment of doing it. So I get that, but I don't think going in with that mindset is ever healthy because you're just, in my opinion, you're kind of putting a premeditated strain on the relationship and marriage and the parenting process because you didn't do the work to be where you need to be.
Well, as humans, I think sometimes we're addicted to hope. Like we hear people say this all the time, I was of age to get married, or I've been with this person for such and such years, so it seems like it's right to get married. And in the back of their mind, they're hoping that everything works out versus, looking at reality. I totally
get that. I totally understand that. But it's interesting. So the question is, as much as our generation is marrying and having children later than the previous generations, are we still doing it too young?
I wouldn't say I think I said this in a previous episode or maybe just in conversation with you, but I always knew that I would not get married before 25 because I've heard that, your mentality kind of changes after 25. So I always grew up knowing that, but I would still hesitate to say that it's a number thing. I think it's a maturity thing.
Thank you. I'm glad you said that. That's exactly how I see it. I think everyone matures differently. And unfortunately, I think now, although people are aging by number, they're not necessarily maturing mentally and emotionally. So when you have situations like that, then you shouldn't be having kids. But how do you know that? You know what I mean? Like most people live in a bubble where they're not aware of their immaturity until it's too late.
Right.
So there's people who are out there who are 35 and may still act like they're 20.
Yeah.
And then there are people out there who are 20 and feel like they're mature and they're ready for that kind of lifestyle. But ultimately, I do think there should be like an age range where it's appropriate because of just the way the body works. Like we know that our brain doesn't fully evolve until a certain age. We know that although women are going through, I said women, but although girls are going through puberty a little bit earlier now because of, crazy hormones in our foods and so on and so forth, that doesn't mean that they should be having children earlier, right? So I see it the same way where just because you're 21 or you're 25 and you have a career and you have your finances together, that doesn't mean you're prepared for marriage. That doesn't mean you're prepared for motherhood. So it's doing the work to realize if you're emotionally, mentally mature enough to lead. Yeah. Because that's what it is. Regardless if you're going into a relationship or marriage, or you're going into parenting, you are responsible for the lives and the souls of other human beings. And if you cannot take on that task and be selfless enough and mature enough to do it well, then you shouldn't be going into it. Right. That's how I see it.
I know this is my first time hearing of this term, but it's CDFA professional, which stands for Certified Divorce Financial Analysis.
Interesting. I never heard that either.
They put together a study and they found that 43% of divorces were due to incompatibility.
Yeah,
basic incompatibility, and they categorize that as beliefs, whether it's religious or political, lifestyles such as hobbies, social habits or routines, finances, intimacy, mismatched sexual expectations or needs, and lastly, communication.
Yeah, we kind of touched on this on the episode that we discussed divorce rates, and so I'll link it above if you haven't watched it. Definitely go check it out. But we kind of touched on that, and it seems like it's always just they have differences that they can't reconcile.
It's like a whole bunch of little things, and I remember hearing this guy. I think he was a pastor or something, but he was speaking about, just couples and saying that there's a lot of things that you won't learn about the person until you start living together.
Facts.
For example, you might be I might be a night owl and you like to go to bed early. If we're just dating, we haven't really gotten to know each other like that. When you want to go to sleep and I want to stay up, that might cause certain issues. And what these professionals were saying is a lot of these divorces start off with just the basic things, like hobbies and, even political views, which is surprising because you think people would discuss that beforehand. Right. But I think the main thing is being able to have certain hard conversations before you're married. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people, which is right, even after you're married, you're supposed to learn who your partner is.
Yeah, because these things also can change.
Right.
You got to be realistic with that too.
A lot of people, it seems that who end up getting divorced or who end up separating is there are certain fundamental beliefs or views that they didn't uncover until
afterwards.
Yeah, after they were married. And I think that's probably the core problem is you didn't know enough or you didn't believe that you know enough before actually getting married.
Yeah, I get that. I definitely think that's a factor. And we kind of touched on it in that episode that I was referring to before. And I see how that leads to a continuous factor on us also having children too young and us maybe just doing this whole thing a little bit too prematurely, right? So for me, I'm I get the finance aspect of it because you want to be financially in a place to be able to take care of, but we have to be honest that there are a lot of people who are financially in a space to do all of this and they are not there in other ways.
To focus on that for a bit, I've always heard that people say nothing could ever really prepare you for parenthood.
Facts.
So are you really ever going to be prepared?
But that's what I said earlier. Like, I don't think it's necessarily that you're going to be fully prepared, because it's one of those things where, like, until you're in it, that's when it becomes like, oh, I got to figure out this part. But I think there are ways to prepare for it. Just like living with a significant other, you don't know a lot of things until you live with them, right? But there are preparation things that you can do in order to get an idea of what that's going to look like. And an example is what you said about certain conversations and knowing like where you stand on certain things. Are you a night owl, or do you like to wake up early in the morning? Because that was one thing for us where it's not an issue at all, but I know that before when we were dating that you like to stay up at night, like your family, you guys be up to like 2, 3 in the morning. And for me, I'm like, I like to be up at 6. So I can't be going to bed at 3 in the morning every day and then waking up at 6. So that was a thing in our relationship. And we found a way to kind of like mesh that where, okay, I go to bed a little bit later, and you go to bed a little bit earlier, and we kind of wake up around the same time. And that doesn't have to be the thing. That doesn't have to be the solution. I feel like for every relationship, you do what works best for you. Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is those conversations are important. And that's what allows you to prepare yourself. Right. So like, let's think of how we prepared for parenthood, right? Because we had a couple years before having children after marriage to kind of like prep mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. So let's talk about some of the things that you think worked for us. Like what do you think you did in those few years after marriage that you think is a good form of preparation? And when I say preparation, I'm not saying you get there and it's like, oh, I already knew this was going to happen. Yeah. But preparation in the sense of like, I'm glad I did this because now I have maybe the extra patience that I need to be a parent. Or maybe I have the extra time now because I did all of these things that alleviated my time. And that was a thing for us, right? We wanted to have the time to spend with our child and our children. So we made certain moves and we didn't make certain moves in order to make sure we were funded so that way you are able to work from home. I'm able to step away from my job for a few years, and we can do that. Right. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So there are forms of preparation out there. It's not going to be like, this is the answer, but you can prepare. And there are a lot of there's a lot of internal work I think that can be done. Like we did a lot of like inquisitive, card games that forced us to dig deeper into our childhood, which led us to here. Right. Look at us now. Thank God. But a lot of those conversations helped me understand you more and help you understand me more, because we were forced to like not just give the standard answers or like answer in a way that we're surface level thinking of, but those questions really made us think. Yeah. And because it made us think, it made us realize like, oh, now I know I don't want to do that with my kid because this was the result for me. Or, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I don't want to keep talking in circles, but you get my point. Yeah. So go ahead.
I think one of the things that I did, the positive things that I did, was a lot of self-evaluation. Because I've always heard people say, kids are a reflection of you. Facts. So I tried to actually compare myself to my parents and see what traits that do my parent characteristics. They're great people, of course, but what do they do or say, or what habits do they have that I wouldn't want
your children to have?
Yeah, my children to have, or my children to experience. So that was a bit humbling, because there was a lot that came up that made me think like, oh snap, like I'm always getting at them for doing X, Y, and Z, but here I am doing, even if it's not exactly the same, something similar. Or I think I maximize or enjoyed quiet time. Like there's times when, working by myself or it's just quiet, and I'll tell myself, enjoy this because
it ain't going to be here for long
kind of thing. And sometimes even now when I crave those moments, I tell myself, you know what, you lived it to the max. You did whatever it is that you had to do. The one thing that I wish that I would have done is do enough to understand that my time will be preoccupied. So going into parenthood, I didn't expect my time to be this preoccupied. As far as, kids being kids 24/7, unless they're literally asleep and not knocked out. I thought it'll be a little different. So I wish I could have told myself back then, like, just be ready to sacrifice your time and whatever goals that you expected to accomplish in 6 months, to give yourself a year and a half kind of thing to do. So that's one thing I would also go back and change.
Time is a good point. For me, felt like at the time that I prepared mentally enough to know like, yeah, my time's going to be, zitch none. Because I've always had the mindset that like, I'm going to be home with my child at least the first year. That was always a thing for me. I personally didn't want a nanny at the time. I didn't want a sitter at the time, unless it was like for date nights, which we found a way to have. But I was really uncomfortable with a stranger watching my kid. If I'm honest, that's really what it was. And, I'm not judging the people who do. I'm just saying like, for me at the time, I wasn't comfortable with it. And so we had agreed in the beginning that we didn't want no stranger. We didn't want a sitter. We didn't want a nanny. We wanted it to be someone who's already within our circle that we knew, who was looking for an opportunity, and we could be like, oh, bet, win-win kind of thing. And then when that didn't happen after 2 years now, because in the first year, that wasn't a problem. Like we weren't looking for that. Even in the first year and a half, we weren't looking. I think it was after 2 that I was just like, okay, now we're at the space because she can vocalize things, she can express herself. Now we're more comfortable where I'm like, okay, I don't mind it as much. And the goal is for me to be able to work on goals and do things while still being present, but having the assistance as well. You know what I mean? So there are people who maybe that's the situation for you too. It goes back to what I said earlier about how you could prepare yourself and not realize as you're in it what things may change. Yeah.
I definitely see your point. And going back to the comment where the listener was saying, have enough, get to a place where you can hire extra help. The harsh reality is, like you mentioned, that's always changing. Because I've known and I've seen personally people who were in a financially comfortable position have to change everything, because the economy changes. You can't really measure that.
Yeah, people lost their jobs. Yeah.
And I think all these factors, I don't think people consider them when they're having kids. Because growing up, I've heard.
No,
what?
I think people consider them
financial, like how things are going to change in the future.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
you should consider them.
You should consider,
I personally consider them because that was something we talked about.
I'm saying, but this is what I've seen just on average, not necessarily what we experienced. But,
sorry, I'm thinking of myself. That's why.
There was a period when I was in my early 20s, and people who are older than me were starting to get married, and I saw how much pressure, even if there was like a 5-7 year gap, how much pressure that put on people my age. Like we got married in our 20s, and right after getting married, people were pressuring us or telling us, like, my mom flat out told me, like, I'm praying for you, like she wanted kids right away. And even after we had our first kid, they were asking for the second kid. So point is, I think a lot of people have kids or get married too soon because of societal pressure.
Well, I think that's a good point. I think that is a factor for a lot of people. That's the importance of having a strong backbone. Yeah. Having a strong backbone and knowing what you want. When you have the conversation with your significant other prior to these moments happening, y'all know what it is. You know what I mean? Like you both know what it is that you want. You both know the plans. It's not like you're just winging it or figuring it out. You both know, like, no, we said we were going to get married because we want to live together and start our journey, but we're going to wait 3 years. Or maybe you want to wait 5 years. Maybe you want to wait 10 years. Maybe you don't want children. The point is, when you're confident in what you want, what you both want, the pressures are not as intimidating. Yeah. I think the people who fall for the pressures are often, they're in a space of like uncertainty. So maybe working on the confidence within your relationship to know, like, this is truly what we desire and we have reasoning behind it. Yeah. Like, not just on some like, whatever, but you both know that this is not something you're looking for at this time. Because I get it. I completely get the societal pressure. I'm not gonna lie. I'm probably I probably pressured a couple people by asking certain questions. It's not the right thing. I'm not condoning this behavior, but I know previously, like before I got married, I had someone where I was just like, all right, so when's the baby? When's the baby? And that experience taught me to not bother people about that because there's also people who are struggling with that experience too, especially when you don't know that and you're asking that question. You don't know what they're dealing with at home. And because of that one person's experience, I then slowed down on saying that or asking people that question. Like if I'm close enough, like if it's my sister,
Yeah.
Whatever. Sorry, sis. But if it's anybody else, no, I try. If I ask you, if we have the conversation or it comes up once, then it's like, that's it. It's not on some like, have kids. I'm not going to tell you to do that if you're not ready. And you guys shouldn't too, please. Because a lot of people are struggling now. A lot of people are going through it trying to have kids, especially those who did wait, who did move the way that we said we wanted to move, like get things in order first and then have the child. Some people then become ready to have the child, and it's a difficult and long journey for them. Yeah. And I know a lot of people will say, well, there's IVF now. Not everyone believes in that. So you have to consider people's morals and people's opinions and their views, maybe their religious beliefs. Not everyone is comfortable with involving science in their process. You know, some people are, some people aren't. So you have to think of that too. And that's one of the first things I thought of when I saw this listener's comment was, while I agree with her, the reality is a lot of people do wait and do that, and their journey is not what they expected it to be, because unfortunately we are at a time where trying to have kids at those ages are much more difficult now because of our health, our diet, and the things we're putting in our bodies. And even the people that are trying to be healthy, it's almost like you can't escape the crap that they put in our foods and the processed foods and stuff. So it made me think of those couples that may see that and think like, well, now I wish I didn't. And they may be living with the regret of not doing it sooner because of their current experience. And maybe they don't believe in IVF, you know?
Yeah, there's pros and cons to both sides.
There's always pros and cons. That's why I love that she put this comment there, because I agree with her in the way of like, be prepared. Don't bring kids into the world if you're not prepared for them. But I wanted us to touch on it a bit because we have to think of different perspectives and remember that there's different journeys. Everyone's on a different journey. They're on a different path, and we have to be somewhat sensitive to those people on different paths. So go with maturity and not with age is basically the summary of this episode, right? Like I would say, don't focus so much on the age. Don't rush, sis. Make sure you're prepared and doing all the right things in every way. And God willingly, things fall into line for you if you're doing your part, you know, but just be sensitive to people out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that was the last episode. Right? Hand clap. I'm actually going to do it. So actually going to have the cheering. So now that season 2 is over, we want to thank you guys for listening, for growing with us. This has been an awesome journey for us. I mean, let me not speak for you. This has been an awesome journey.
It's definitely been an amazing journey. When you first brought this idea up, I'm not going to lie, I was like,
hell no.
We're going to do what?
Yeah, I was saying that. Remember, I was just like, it's just a thought. Maybe we could just get people to do it. We were like, we'll get other people and we'll just produce it. Yeah. Like, you know, but God had other plans.
Yeah, so. But once I saw your actual passion for it, I definitely got on board. And I was telling you this yesterday. I hope we do this until we're old and gray.
Yeah, that's too much.
Honestly, because I think hopefully people are getting value out of this, but I think
that's the goal.
We're getting value out of this,
and I think that's
as well. So
that's what we said. We literally was like, you know what? If one person listens and gets something out of it, so be it. But the beauty of life is you think you're doing things to service others, and you end up servicing yourself in a way. Yeah. To some extent, I think this has been like, low-key, it feels like it was for us.
Yeah.
So if you guys are being like influenced by it and blessed by it, we're thankful. Thank you so much. And grateful. Thank God. But season 3, hopefully, we'll be back in September. You know, hopefully we can keep this going. Not as long as he said.
We'll see.
We don't know. Well, I mean, I don't want to close any doors or whatever, but nah.
You just thought about it?
I did. It's a lot of work. It's a full-time job doing all of this. And I'm like, there are other passions and goals that I have that I want to accomplish. Time is limited. You know, I love doing this with y'all, but there are other things that I want to do. So season 3 will be back in September. Hopefully that's the plan. And hopefully we'll have a bunch of new topics to discuss with you guys, to grow with you guys, and learn with you guys. If you have any topic suggestions, we are open to suggestions. You can always shoot us a video, shoot us a DM, a link, just a topic in general, even if it's broad. We love hearing what you guys want to hear. And that allows us to kind of like gain an understanding of your perspective on what things you may be going through at this point in time in your life, because we pretty young. I'm going to tell you that right now. So if you're in your 50s, you know, just let us know. Give us a little expectation of what to expect in our 40s as we approach it. So definitely communicate with us. You can comment below on episodes. If you're watching an episode and something pops up in your head that you think would be a good, like, second part to it, definitely let us know. You can continue following our Instagram. We are going to continue posting as much as we can as we have this time off, and we'll keep you guys engaged on when the new season will start, an exact date. And yeah, I feel like I just talked a whole lot.
Well, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Thanks for all the support, all the private messages and public messages. As you mentioned,
the phone calls, the texts, the voice notes, we got them all, and we thank you guys for listening, and we're glad it's doing.
The whole point of this is to really create balance in our lives. That's what I think God wants for this universe, for our lives, is to have balance. You know, you go through so much highs and lows, but the balance areas, I think that's where the sweet spot is. So if we were able to bring any kind of balance to your life, any kind of understanding to your relationships, you know, we really appreciate the opportunity to do so. And we hope to see you all next season.
Season 3. If you are new here, go catch up. You got a couple weeks. Go catch up. And if you've been listening, listen again. Listen again. Maybe you'll find something new, because that happens to us. We randomly listened to like a few episodes like the past couple weeks, and we were like, oh, our perspective kind of changed, or we gained something else from it. And that's the beauty of conversations like this, is you're always changing. Yeah. So you have a conversation and we get to listen back to it, and we're just like, oh, but this perspective. Yeah. So we're glad we get to do that.
And I would add, one of the biggest lessons or takeaway from me doing this is you never really know how you feel unless you share it with someone. So there's a lot of times
vocalizing it makes you realize
I've said something on this podcast. It's not until I'm re-listening to it that I'm like, oh snap, I didn't know I actually felt that way. But sometimes I say, you know, I agree, and I double down. And other times I'm like, maybe my perspective changed since we recorded it. But yeah, it's been a great journey.
Yeah, it has. So thank y'all. We love y'all. Mwah. And we're out. Thank you for spending your time with us. We hope you gained some knowledge today that'll promote poise in your life. We have new episodes uploaded every Thursday right here, same place, same time. Until next time, you can follow us on Instagram at NOIRPOISED Podcast to stay connected. That's NOIRPOISED Podcast. We'd love to hear your feedback.
And remember, your wisdom is power.